movie. I've been doing HIV research for the last 15 or so years, and most of it related to complex social and structural issues that affect the lives of people living with HIV or affect their HIV risks. And about 8 years ago, I started hearing from a lot of the patients that we work with that the overwhelmingly important role that faith and spirituality and religion and their churches play in their lives, and the sad stories that many of them told about how they had not been embraced by their churches or their families. And so I started really doing a lot more work on this, and we developed a coalition of clergy in 2 different cities from around the country, in both Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and also Jackson, Mississippi, a coalition of pastors who are committed to working together on this and committed to working with their congregations. And so we're really trying to help raise awareness about the overwhelming stigma and often paralyzing stigma that's associated with HIV in our country and also around the world. We also want to highlight a lot of the good work that's being done. I've been working in Jackson, Mississippi for the last 8 years, and it is a city that has the 3rd or 4th highest rates of HIV infection in the country, and some really amazing HIV prevention and treatment work that's being led by a lot of our colleagues. You all may know that Brown has a 50-year partnership with Tougaloo that was grounded in the response and the civil rights movement starting in the 1950s and 60s. And that partnership continues today, and we are very committed to improving the health and well-being of people living with HIV in Jackson, and also providing students from Mississippi with educational opportunities here at Brown and also beyond. So this is a fitting film that tells and explains the story of the gravity of the HIV/AIDS epidemic in the South. You all may know that about 50% of new HIV infections in the United States are among people who are living in the Deep South, but the Deep South does not get most of the resources, which I would argue is a social justice and civil rights crisis. And so we really want to sound the alarm bells about this, and also showcase a lot of the personal stories of people living with HIV and of the heroes who are doing the public health and HIV prevention work on a day-to-day basis. And so that's why we're hosting this film. This is also a very complex racial issue. It's really important to acknowledge that most new HIV infections in the United States are among African Americans, but African Americans don't engage in any higher risk behaviors of other races. So what is it that's happening? We have a whole lot of social and structural problems that are driving this crisis, including a lot of stigma. Hi, Brian. This is one of our HIV clinicians. Thank you for joining us. Including a lot of stigma in the Deep South and also in the African American community. The only way to fight stigma is to fight it with facts and to have leadership and to share information about what is contributing to these alarming rates of health disparities, and also what we can and should do about it. So I want to just introduce Other Kane. He is the president and CEO of OCD Media in Jackson, Mississippi. He also has his own television show on JSU TV. He's on television every morning. And one thing that's so exciting about Other's work, and what really inspires me, we've been working together for the last couple of years, and what really inspires me about it is that everything he does is about mentoring young people and training the next generation of journalists, activists, scholars, you name it. He is out there doing the work. And I was on TV with him last week in Jackson. I was so inspired because when I got on his show, I realized it was run by students. And this is one of the reasons why I love working with him, is that he does the work every day. And, we're friends on Facebook, and I was giggling a couple weeks ago because I got on and I saw a picture of Other in a selfie that he had taken like this with a bunch of young kids on a bus that he was taking to see the movie Selma. And this is someone who does the work all day, every day, wakes up thinking about a lot of these issues and many, many others that affect the lives of people living in Jackson. We were brought together by a pastor who I had approached about doing work related to HIV, and that pastor said, "You got to get with Other Kane. You know, he makes a lot of people mad because he tells it like it is, but he does the work all day, every day, and you guys will be great partners." And since that day, we've been working together hand in hand in partnership to try to bring more African American clergy into our coalition to fight stigma across the state of Mississippi. And he's done a remarkable job and has gotten this issue on the front page of every major newspaper in Jackson, and has recruited over 50 preachers to get involved in the fight against HIV/AIDS. So I can't really say enough good things about this man or give him enough accolades. He is my partner in crime. He's one of my heroes, and I can't think of a better person to introduce all the other Southern heroes who'll be on our panel tonight. Please join me in welcoming Other Kane.
So let me take this opportunity to say good evening to each and every one of you. We are excited to be here tonight. Did you enjoy the film? Let's give the filmmakers a big round of applause and all those who had anything to do with that collaboration. We're going to ask our panel members to come on up and let's get them mic'd up, and then we're going to begin our introductions of them. I'll take that far chair there, and you guys choose either one of those three. Tonight, we certainly hope that we are able to continue the conversation that was shared in the film tonight. I think you will be extremely impressed with our panel members tonight. Each of them have their own story and why the fight in HIV is so important to them. Being from the South, there are some of the things, some words that I took away out of that film that I wish I could say sometimes, you know? Because when we look at stigma and all those things that are associated in this fight, I certainly wish that I could take some of those words and use them perhaps more often than we heard it in the film sometimes. All right, so I think they are all mic'd up, and so in no particular order, I do want to introduce our panel members so that we can go on and get into this rich discussion tonight. Dr. Adia Rana is an assistant professor of medicine at Brown University. She conducts research about caring for pregnant women living with HIV in Mississippi. Let's give her a big round of applause. Thank you so much for being with us. I want to go to Antoine. Antoine Matthews. He is a junior at Tougaloo College in Jackson, Mississippi. And of course, Dr. Nunn talked about the Brown-Tougaloo relationship. When you look at a young person who is extremely passionate, extremely engaged, extremely vocal about his work, you see Antoine. We bill him as a youth activist. I had a few minutes to just chit-chat with him prior to this film, because I was looking at it and I was like, you know, you look maybe a little nervous. He said, no, not nervous. Just when I think about my life and I think about doing presentations like this, I think about how blessed I am to be in a position to do this. And he said, I also think about my future, to be where I am and to think that my next step could possibly be Brown University. I'm blessed. Please welcome Antoine. And then this next young lady, I consider to be a preacher's preacher. I consider her to be a friend. I consider her to be a leader. So I started going, visiting the church prior to her becoming the pastor of the church. Her dad was the pastor there. And getting to know Pastor Jennifer, I said, wow, she's a fireball. She's young, You may not know that she's white. Her church is in the middle of an African American community, and she's going to talk a lot about that. She'll talk a little bit about the zip code that her church is in, and her congregation is mostly black, but she is a fireball. And I consider her to be a black preacher because anytime a preacher gets into the pulpit and they have 3 closing, they're a black preacher. In my book. But Pastor Jennifer, I mean, words really can't convey adequately the passion that she exudes. She's a fighter. She's a truth teller. And she travels a lot. But the thing that really gets me, she stands solidly on her principles, and she stands solidly on her belief. And I absolutely am honored to call you friend. Pastor Jennifer Beard from Jackson, Mississippi. Her church is the Jackson Revival Center. So, having said all of that, let's welcome all of our panel members once again. So I want to get right into the discussion just a little bit, and I am going to move there in a second. But I want to get right into this. And Antoine, I do want to start with you, because when we looked at the film, we saw a lot of young people, right? We saw, I in particular saw several people that I knew, didn't really realize that I knew that many people in the film. I saw a couple of Jackson State University students in the film, not knowing that they were there. Being a student at Tougaloo, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in this work. And right before you do, I just want to offer this this caveat. So we were at Tougaloo, and we were doing an event with the Deltas, and we were representing Mississippi Faith in Action. So we're going out talking to these clergy folk and getting them all involved. And so Antoine was charged with the responsibility of handling and manning the booth, while I was moderating another panel discussion. And so everybody had their booths all set up. He looked over at me and he said, "You want me to go get some condoms and put on this booth?" I said, "You know what? This is Mississippi Faith in Action. Go do it. Let's get it done." So tell us about your passion and what this work means to you.
Well, hey everyone. To tell a little about myself, I'm a student, educator, son, scholar, a believer, a creator. I'm all in one. A writer. I just can't really define who I am because I constantly grow and find out something new daily about myself. So I constantly find out that I'm whoever I want to be. How I got into this work was this month, actually, the 26th, will make 2 years since I've been HIV positive. And what I decided was, I can't feel sorry for myself. The day I found out, it seems like yesterday, I cried for 4 hours straight. I prayed for 4 hours straight, and I came to a conclusion. What can I do to help? That was on my mind. I didn't care about my health because I knew with the medicine out here, I can get treated, I can build my T cells, and I can come back and fight. My thing was to help people who didn't know that they still had a chance, that they still had a voice. So my thought process was to start something that can really help. Fall 2013, once I started college, I started a health club organization as well at Tougaloo College, Tougaloo Health Peer Educators. Health stands for helping, educating, advising, learning, teaching, and healing. And what we do, we teach about different health disparities. Starting off with me being HIV positive, that made me want to help not just with HIV, but every disease from cancer, from thyroid disease, anything you can think of, we talk about. Self-improvement. So now what I'm doing with that is starting to branch off to other colleges. 2 weeks ago, I just started my second organization at East Mississippi Community College. So now it's East Mississippi Health Peer Educators. And what I decided to do was start this organization to let everyone know that it starts with us. If we go out and fight 20-year-olds And we constantly tell our brothers and sisters who growing up and coming to college what to do and what not to do. They'll help us to defeat HIV. I'm not for sure if everyone is aware on the history of HIV, but it was actually known since like 1970, but the first case happened in 1980. The government was kind of aware in the 70s, but we didn't take the proper procedures to try to stop it. And what we're doing now, instead of blaming, I want to be able to go out and fight it. I want to be the one on the front line to actually show my work, to actually say that I put in to get this done. So I never really want anyone to feel sorry for me because I don't feel sorry for myself. I make mistakes and you go on with life. But every time somebody throws a stone at me, I just pick it up and bring it with me. I take that criticism and I work on it. And I just constantly tell myself I can do it. It haven't always been this way. I kind of resented myself, kind of didn't want to look at myself in the mirror, kind of hated myself because I felt like I gave myself HIV. I didn't believe in myself. And it's something that I constantly go back and forth with, and that's something that I had to finally accept and say, it's okay. And I had to keep moving. So now, with me moving and making moves to better the economy, to help people to understand this disease at hand, I feel great when I wake up in the morning. So that's the reason why I tell people, don't feel sorry for me, because I don't feel sorry for myself.
All right, very good. Very good. You're doing amazing work to be an underclassman, you know what I mean, and already taking one model and rolling it out. That's a major accomplishment, particularly when you talk about balancing that with your schoolwork. So kudos to you. Pastor Jennifer, let's talk a little bit about where your church is situated and what really connected you to this work.
Absolutely. Our church has been located right in the heart of the city of Jackson since the early 1970s. Since that time, the demographics of our city have changed, the demographics of our neighborhood have changed. And we are in an area where about 85% of the people living in that area are considered to be below poverty. There's prostitution in the area where our church is. There's drug sales, there's drug use. At the same time, there are some wonderfully bright, talented people in that area. The way I began to get involved with HIV and AIDS is that people from our congregation began coming and sharing stories of stigmatization, discrimination. One young lady came and shared with me. She came to our church and ended up joining, but she had been what we call de-churched, that she had been so hurt by the church that she had just said she wasn't going to do the church thing anymore. And in talking with her, I asked what happened to make her feel that the church was not a safe place. And she began to share that her father had AIDS and died. And he had been a member of a church in the city for a number of years, had served in that church, paid tithe in that church, and at the time of his death, people found out that he died of AIDS, and they would not allow him to have his funeral in that church. And she talked about the pain that it caused for she and her mother. Another story, I encountered an elderly lady who was in her 80s, who had been married over 40 years to the same man, faithful, committed relationship. He passed away. She lived as a widow for several years, then began to date a deacon in their church, married him, consummated the marriage, and contracted HIV. He was a deacon in a church, did not know he was HIV positive. And so there's so many stories of stigmatization, and for so long the church has remained silent because the church, I believe, as a whole kind of equated HIV and AIDS with people engaging in risky behaviors. But as I began to meet people and put names and faces with HIV and AIDS, I I began to understand the church cannot remain silent, because it is not one population of people being affected by HIV and AIDS. The church is dying because they are related and affected. And last but not least, then I began to have people in our congregation coming to me, trusting me enough to share intimate details of their life, sharing with me that they've been diagnosed. And so I just believe that as leaders in the faith community, we cannot remain silent, because silence is death.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And we're going to move to the conversation of what else the church can do, how the church can expand its efforts there. Adi, you're in a very unique place in that you have an opportunity to do work here and also to work in the South. How did this film move you, particularly as it relates to your work from a clinical perspective?
Sure. So I thought this documentary was absolutely fantastic and really amazing, and it really made you feel all of the stories. I mean, I think that's always a good sign of a documentary, is I really felt like I knew Josh, and I felt like I knew Monica, and I certainly knew Kathy. And I think that the issues that they bring up, I think it was extremely poignant when Josh says, when he's surrounded by what he considers, or who he considers his family, he's like, your people,
Right.
And where you're going to seek comfort, and when you're going to seek care, and when you feel happy or you feel sad, these are the individuals that you're going to reach out to. And I think a lot of these same concepts we are trying to replicate in our healthcare system, in that HIV kills when people don't know their diagnosis and don't seek their care or don't stay in care. And our challenge is to bring everyone into the fold, so help people know their diagnosis and know that they can come and seek care in a safe, confidential place where they don't feel like the other. They feel like their family. And know that they're going to get high quality care. And I think that is a challenge that we face all around. The stigma that is the HIV diagnosis is very strong. And in many ways, it's almost the absurdity of it. When you think about how many people are dying or how many people are being hospitalized, and you ask, well, why isn't this person seeking care, or why did this person die? And one part of the answer is that they couldn't disclose their diagnosis, or they didn't feel comfortable doing that. It's just heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking. And so to see somebody like Monica create this organization and bring so many people together who are willing to share their experiences. As you mentioned, I work in Jackson with the perinatal HIV service, bringing pregnant and postpartum women, in care. The one time that women definitely go to the doctor, at least once, is when they have a baby. And so we're trying to use that opportunity to engage the women, maybe address some of the issues that they feel prevent them from getting into care and staying in care after the baby has been delivered. And some of the most challenging moments were trying to organize the women into, say, a focus group or a support group, or discussion, because there was so much concern about disclosure and confidentiality. And I interviewed many women where we often talk about structural issues like, oh, I have to travel so far, or I don't have transportation. And we have to remember that if they have to travel so far, maybe the solution is, well, they need to have a clinic closer to where they live. Well, one of the reasons the women are traveling so far is because, their auntie works at that clinic. near where they live, and there's no way they're going to walk through that door and essentially disclose their diagnosis to them. So seeing Monica and her willingness to empower herself and empower others was really, really amazing. I also have to add an aside. Growing up in Alabama, that was a flashback moment in that seeing that health class, because I'm pretty sure I had that exact same lecture, and
You use the exact same verbiage.
and in Alabama we always say thank God for Mississippi, because we actually were allowed to use the word if we asked, if we said condom, then our health teacher was allowed to comment on it. So we were actually allowed to use the word condom, but that was a very educational class.
And of course, this may surprise you. In Mississippi, we always say thank God for Alabama.
I know, we'll see.
So, since you're speaking geography, let's just stay right there. So, I jotted down just several towns that were listed in the film: Cleveland, Mississippi, Columbia, Louisiana, Delta State University. There was Chatham, Louisiana, of course, Jackson, Mississippi. Geography is a problem. It's problematic, not just because relatives are in the clinic. That's part of it. But really, it's the whole notion of access. So this is my first time here in Providence, and so when I was on a tour earlier today, I toured a health clinic and some other places, and I said, everything is right here. So you can get the education, you can get the treatment, you can get everything. Social services, everything is right here in this little hub. Well, the Delta portion of this film, not so much.
Not so much.
How does that impact your work?
Absolutely. I mean, it is, working here in the clinic and then going down there, I have students come and work, want to work with me on different projects in global health, and they want to go internationally and work in resource limited settings. So come with me to Jackson, because there's certainly a lot to do there. I was just talking actually with one of my patients this morning about coming to clinic, and we were giving him a bus pass so he could come to clinic regularly and such. And the J train, as we were talking about in Jackson, it couldn't get a patient anywhere. And in Rhode Island, maybe take you a few hours, but you could basically get anywhere you need to go in Rhode Island, and I think it's true in the Northeast. So I think you are spot on about access. And while it may be true about confidentiality in certain areas, just overall access to care, whether it's the physical location of the clinic, whether you feel comfortable going there, whether they actually have the services that you need. I think those are a huge challenge, especially in areas like the Delta in Northwest Mississippi, and have been in the Black Belt in Alabama. Certainly has been a tremendous area of need. And I think that improving those issues is going to take a tremendous amount of investment, not just on our part. We're sort of soldiering on, doing our grassroots efforts, but it's really going to take an extreme amount of investment by our government, whether it's local, whether it's state, whether it's federal. And that's why, in the documentary, Kathy, what she's doing is just phenomenal. She very astutely recognized early on that she's not going to get the help that she needs in Birmingham, and that she needs to go to where that is. So I think addressing access from all of those angles is going to be a critical part of impacting this epidemic, certainly.
Pastor Jennifer, doing this work with Mississippi Faith in Action, we recognize that people, particularly African Americans, gather around two words that begin with an F. Food, fellowship. And I can add a third one, faith, right? And so, to that extent, people living with HIV, they tap into their faith. it's strong, it's serious. How, as a faith leader, can you help strengthen that, particularly strengthening the resolve? You know what I mean? And because typically in the South, for a long time, it was browbeat.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
Non-acceptance, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
as a faith leader, the tide is changing. Dr. Nan often says, you know, people say, I couldn't do this work, and I say, did you ask? Right? So faith leaders are getting involved, and
Yes.
you're defying the odds. And you have a strong health ministry. Let's talk about that. How do you continue that access?
Well, I think it's very important for us to begin to implement programs within our churches. We are in the Bible Belt, and so it's not just a spiritual thing, it's a cultural thing to go to church in the Deep South. I mean, that is the Sunday morning thing to do. There's a church on every corner in Jackson, Mississippi, throughout the state. And so it provides us with a unique opportunity that we can implement programs within our churches to provide prevention education, provide opportunities for testing. And this does not go against biblical teaching. This does not go against any of that. Particularly where our church is located, it's considered a hot zone. Our zip code is one of the most affected zip codes in the nation. So I don't feel like it is wrong. I feel like it is a necessity that we address this because at the end of the day, it is about saving lives. So I believe that that's one of the things we must do. Number one, we must break the silence. We must begin to have courageous conversations. We must begin to put our faith into action, to take it out of theory and begin to put it into practice. That we must, if you look in the Bible and you consider Jesus' response to those who were leprous during his time, that they were during that time the outcast. They had to wear torn clothing. They had to wear their hair disheveled. They had to walk around screaming, unclean, unclean. They could not live among the general population. And I feel like the church must confess that we have been behind, so to speak, in coming to the forefront and taking a position of leadership when everybody else was rejecting those who were lepers. We see 2 days before Passover, Jesus was in the house of Simon the leper, ministering, loving, healing, showing compassion. And I believe that we have treated those with HIV and AIDS as if they were lepers, that we have pushed them to the side, we've ostracized, we've criticized. And I think many times it's because we have not educated ourselves. And it's easy to put it off on somebody else when it's just a random thing, but when they become faces in your congregation, when they become members of your family, you begin to understand this is not a black problem, it's not a white problem, it's not a female problem, it's not a male problem, it's not a Democrat problem. It is a global crisis, and so we must respond.
Awesome. Antoine, being a young person, student at Tougaloo, how has it impacted you? Or do you have a lot to deal with as far as stigma amongst other students?
When people see me on TV or seeing the magazine that I was in, they come up to me and they tell me, I didn't know you was going through this. And I would look back at them and say, well, it's not something that I just bust out and say. It's not like I have a stamp on my shirt that say HIV. It's just something, I just wake up and I just keep going. People that I tell, they accept it. I have some people that were real close to me, and when I told them, it just changed. Their attitude changed. They didn't understand completely on why I stopped doing certain things for them, because at a time I thought I was gonna have to pay for my medicine myself. My parents don't finance me. I'm in school a biology major, so I really can't work. So I'm trying to save my money so I can pay for my own medicine, trying to find a way. She was like my best friend, but one day we got into a heated argument. She was upset, and she stated, "You better stop talking before I embarrass you." And we was in front of other people. So when she said that, I mentally blocked her out, and I went on with my day. And I knew then that it's people that I'll run into and I can never trust, but I will always love them. I will never bring them down because they trying to bring me down, because I know who I am. I have to just accept me. And regardless if everyone in the room is staring at me or pointing at me saying that I have HIV, I'm still gonna hold my head high, and I'm gonna keep walking, and I'm gonna keep doing what I have to do because I am who I am.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Antoine shared with me, when he found out, it took him about 4 hours to accept this, whereas it has taken other folk 20, 30, 40 years to come to grips with their status. So kudos to you. Quickly, and we'll move to audience questions in just a second, but quickly, can you talk about family acceptance in the African American community, particularly in the South? It is still taboo to a large extent to talk about HIV, and I'm sure that crosses cultural lines, but since I'm a black man, I can speak from a black perspective. For African American males, sometimes it can be very difficult to have this conversation with your father. I've heard black fathers say, you're cutting down or you're shutting off my bloodline. You're causing the family name shame. Have you had to deal with any type of family drama centered around this?
Yes, in a sense. The first person I told when I found out, because I was kind of close to my father, we was building a relationship, I had told him, I didn't want to tell my mom because she nags a lot. So to listen to that, have to listen to someone bicker in my ear, I just didn't have time. So I was going to tell her on my own terms. But I told him the day after my birthday, April the 26th, it was a Saturday. And then I told my mom, like April the 28th. I went ahead and started telling people that I needed to tell because, as you know, stigma, and as you know, people don't have that support. And when they run around with those secrets, it kind of brings them down even more. So I just wanted to go ahead and tell my family. I told my mom. She went ahead and had time to cry because my dad told her that day, and I told him not to. But once she found out, she accepted it. She know that I'm doing well. She know that I'm trying to better myself. So she's okay with it. She told me one day that my dad told her that he took an insurance policy out on me. And I was like, okay, that's pretty intense. But I was like, I can't change your mindset. You're like 50 something. You have a mindset already. You already seen most of it when you were in the 80s and the 90s. So you believe what you want to believe. You're going to believe that I'm going to die, and I'm going to sit here and tell you that I'm not. And I'm not going to sit here and debate with you. That's not something I'm here to do. Either you're going to accept it or you're not, because I accepted it. Right. So with me accepting it and him knowing that I don't need you. You my father, yes, true enough, but I can continue to live my life for me. And once he finally realized that I can really just go without talking to him, we recently reconnected the beginning of this year, February, and he told me that he just came to terms to finally accept who I am, to understand that he cannot change who I am, and the only thing he can do is constantly love me and just be here for me. And that's all I want. That's all I want from people is either you're gonna be here or you're not. If you're here, okay. If you're not, okay.
Okay.
So with my family, my brother, my sister, my friends, my true friends, it's nothing new. I just continue to go. Only thing I do differently is take a pill at night. That's the only thing that I do differently. I'm still the same person that I was before I was HIV positive. Nothing changed. So for people to be in my life and don't change, that's amazing. And I really do appreciate them for that.
And with that, I'm going to close with Pastor Jennifer Beard closing us out in a call to action. I must say, she is the best orator I have ever heard in my entire life. And remember that I'm from Arkansas, home to William Jefferson Clinton, Fulbright, and Mike Huckabee. I am used to colorful politicians and colorful orators, but with that, I'm going to pass the baton for her to close us out in a call to action. Thank you all so much.
Well, you have to remember, as I come, I am representing the faith community. And, but to begin with, I just want us to understand that we must move from a place of indifference to a place of involvement. We must move from a place of condemnation to a place of compassion. Theologically, there is no cookie cutter answer, but there's no logical explanation to those who are dealing with pain. There's no logical explanation for the fear of those who are ill. There's no cookie cutter answer to the grief of those who are left behind, but there absolutely positively must be a response. We can no longer sit back and be silent. We can no longer sit back and push this off on other people. And so what I want to encourage us to do as a community of faith is to begin to develop a theological framework that we don't just look between the lines of what's right and what's wrong, but we begin to study the nature and the character of what it means to be Christian. If we look at the prodigal son in Luke chapter 15, we find a father who is waiting, who is willing, who is wanting to welcome his son and receive him back home. The son has left the house. He is engaged in riotous living, but the father is there waiting to receive him in spite of whatever the perceived imperfections may have been. And we all, if we're honest with ourselves, have played the role of the prodigal son. We've all at some point in time played the role of the other brother. We've played the role of the one who has stood in judgment, but in spite of the shame, the father looked at the prodigal son and said, "You are my son." And he told the elder brother that if I have received him as my son, you must also receive him as your brother. And so we've got to get to the place that we understand we cannot reject what God has accepted. We cannot ostracize those whom God has embraced. And the mercy of God sometimes is a complicated and a confusing thing. But the Bible said that all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. And so that means that as fallen humanity, if we had not done some of the things that we've done, God would not have had to do some of the things that he has done. But since all of us have sinned and since all of us have fallen short of the glory of God, we all need the mercy of God. If we hadn't messed up, God would not have had to clean it up. If we had not failed, he would not have had to forgive. But since we did do what we all have done, then we all ought to be able to come together under that same umbrella of needing the mercy and grace of God and extend to one another the same mercy and grace that God has extended to each of us. And so we've got to get to the place that we understand Christian theology clearly condemns discrimination and stigmatization. Anytime we get to the place that we begin to belittle the essential worth of a human being, we have offended the heart of God. So we must break the silence. We must change our behavior. We must change our language. You know, a lot of times as Christians, we ask everybody else to do the changing, but we must make changes. We must eliminate certain types of language from our vocabulary and begin to let our behavior as Christians translate into unconditional love, that we tell people God is a God of unconditional love, yet we fail to show that one to another. And so I believe that real unconditional love must exist within the church, and it should translate into encouragement, it should translate into supportive care, and it should translate into help for all of those who are ill. We have to understand words can hurt or words can heal. And it's our place that we use the Word of God to heal people. It doesn't mean that we don't challenge people to change if there's any behavior that's incongruent with Scripture. But in challenging to change, the Bible said it is the goodness of the Lord that leads people to repentance. And for some people, changed behavior may just mean being quiet if you can't offer hope. We must be intentional about eliminating and eradicating discrimination and stigmatization, because that only undermines a collective response. It only undermines health efforts toward prevention and care. We have to understand, many times when I've talked to people that have been affected by HIV and AIDS, they have told me that the hardest part of living with HIV and AIDS is not the fear of dying, is not dealing with the illness itself, but it is the reality of rejection from people that they know and love. It is the rejection, the fear of rejection from family members, from churches, from medical professionals, and of course strangers if they find out about your status. And so we must commit to walk our talk, that no longer can we just talk about the unconditional love of God, but we must show that one to another. And that in walking that out, that means giving people information. It means implementing programs within our community, within our churches, within our schools, even on jobs. We need to begin to give people information, and beyond giving information and beyond providing preventive care, we must also begin to arm people and get them to get tested, because if they're not tested and do not know their status, then people continue to be exposed. Beyond that, we must also be courageous and assume a position of leadership, be bold, even at the expense sometimes among the community of faith, of challenge our reputation being challenged, that we are compromising. We are not compromising, but we are being the heart and the arms of Jesus extended into our community. And last but not least, we should embrace a new sense of community and stop acting as if we're our own separate island. Churches have got to come together. The community of faith must come together and form partnerships with the medical community, with hospitals, with hospices, with clinics, and we must come together and offer a holistic support and really be in action, not just theory only.